Danger Dolan.
From school shootings to a teen who killed his own mother, we count 15 of the youngest killers of all time. Number 15. 13-year-old Eric Smith was arrested in 1993 for murdering 4-year-old Derek Roby. Smith, who was a victim of bullying himself, had lured Roby into a deserted park and choked him. He then dropped rocks on Roby's head, then sodomized him with a tree branch. Tragically, this was the first time Roby's mother had ever let him go outside unsupervised. Eric confessed to the murder and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. He's been denied parole 7 times. Number 14. 8-year-old Amarjeet Sada proved himself no angel when he murdered 3 infants, including his sister and cousin, in 2007. Amarjeet had crushed 2 of the girls and strangled another, and his scumbag family attempted to help him cover the murders up. In accordance with Indian law, Amarjeet can't be charged with murder, so he's being detained in a children's home until he turns 18. Number 13. George Stinney was recently exonerated, but his story's still fascinating. In 1944, the 14-year-old was charged with the murder of 2 girls, 11-year-old Betty June Benneker and 7-year-old Mary Emma Tams. George was assumed responsible after a witness saw him talking to the girls the day before the murder. The racial media circus that followed saw the young African-American convicted and executed in less than 3 months. He remains the youngest person in the United States to die by electric chair. His family and some journalists recently cleared his name by bringing to light inconsistencies and a lack of physical evidence in George's largely circumstantial case. Where was Atticus Finch when we needed him? Number 12. 14-year-old Lionel Tate claimed he was imitating TV wrestlers when he brutally beat 6-year-old Tiffany Unick to death. Lionel's mother, Kathleen, was entrusted with babysitting Tiffany but left her with Lionel. Lionel admitted to placing her in a headlock and slamming her against a table while supposedly play wrestling. A medical examiner determined that a forceful stomping had lacerated Tiffany's liver, killing her. Experts also confirmed that the girl had suffered a fractured skull and ribs, swelling in the brain from a prolonged 5-minute beating, and 35 other injuries. Tate was sentenced to life in prison without parole in 2001, but this sentence was later overturned because he hadn't been given a mental competency hearing before the trial. He was released on probation in 2004, but was later rearrested for robbing a pizza delivery man. Number 11. Graham Young. Like a character from a morbid fairy tale, 14-year-old Graham Young is on this list for poisoning his stepmother's tea in 1962. She became fatally ill and, to Graham's amusement, died months later. Graham's aunt turned him into authorities, who diagnosed him with schizophrenia. He was sent to Broadmoor Hospital for rehabilitation, where he ended up learning more about toxic potions. He soon took another victim and poisoned at least 70 others before being arrested. He died in his cell at the age of 42. Graham said poisoning others was like a drug habit. Number 10. Barry Lucaitis was 14 when he shot and killed his algebra teacher and 2 classmates at Frontier Middle School in 1996. Barry entered the school with 78 rounds of ammunition and a high-powered rifle. He also had 2 handguns concealed in his trench coat. He shot 3 of his victims at point-blank range, fired indiscriminately at others, and briefly took hostages. He suffered from clinical depression and took Ritalin to counteract his hyperactivity. Barry has now traded the trench coat for a jumpsuit. He's currently serving 2 mandatory life sentences. Number 9. Joshua Phillips. In 1998, 14-year-old Joshua Phillips was charged with murdering his 8-year-old neighbor, Maddie Clifton. The incident occurred one evening in Jacksonville, Florida. According to Joshua, he and Maddie were playing baseball when he accidentally struck her with the ball. This made Maddie cry, and in panic, Joshua hit her in the head to silence her screams, as you do. He also stabbed her twice in the throat, which, even if it were acceptable to bash somebody over the head with a baseball bat, once they discover the knife wounds, it kind of blows your bullshit story out of the water. Joshua then brought Maddie's body to his house and stuffed it under his waterbed. Joshua's mother discovered the corpse a week later because the odor coming from his room smelled less like puberty and more like homicide. Joshua was sentenced to life without parole. Number 8. Craig Price. In 1989, 15-year-old Craig Price burglarized the home of Joan Heaton. However, Craig hadn't expected Joan to be home or that she'd defend herself with a kitchen knife. The situation escalated into a brutal murder scene. Craig stabbed Joan approximately 60 times, and her girls, who were also home and aged 8 and 10, received 30 stab wounds between them. One was stabbed so fiercely that the knife broke off in her neck. During the struggle, Craig received a cut to the hand, which helped the police identify him. He also admitted to another murder that occurred 2 years earlier. Craig was convicted before his 16th birthday and is still rotting in jail. Number 7. Jesse Pomeroy was the youngest person convicted of first-degree murder in the history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He was only 11 when he started his cruel acts against other children. He took 7 children to a secret place where he stripped them down, tied them up, and tortured them with knives. He was sent to a reform school as punishment, but the little psychopath fooled everyone into releasing him after only a year. 3 years later, he kidnapped and killed 10-year-old Katie Curran and is believed to have murdered a 4-year-old boy whose mutilated body turned up at Dorchester Bay. Jesse was convicted for Katie's death and served a life sentence in solitary confinement where he died at the age of 72. Number 6. Mary Bell. In 1968, 11-year-old Mary Bell murdered 2 boys in Scotswood, England. She strangled 4-year-old Martin Brown in an abandoned house, then did the same to 3-year-old Brian Howe months later with the help of her friend Norma Joyce Bell. The girls also mutilated Brian's limbs and genitals, then carved an M into his stomach. Mary was the daughter of a dominatrix prostitute and told police she did it for the joy of killing. She justified her actions by saying she was sexually abused at an early age by her mother's clients. Mary was in prison for 12 years and controversially released in 1980 with a new identity. At the time of her arrest, Mary said, "Murder isn't that bad, we all die sometime anyway." However, she's enjoyed a long, free life, becoming a grandmother in 2009. Number 5. Paul Henry Gingrich. In 2010, Paul Henry Gingrich shot and killed Philip Danner, the stepfather of his friend Colt Lundy. Gingrich was 12 and Lundy was 15. The pair wanted to run away to Arizona together, so Lundy hatched a plan to kill his disapproving stepfather and enlisted Paul's help. When stepfather Philip returned home, Paul, following Lundy's instructions, shot him 4 times in the chest. Paul was sentenced to 30 years in prison and may receive parole at 18 if he successfully completes his rehabilitation program. The case was controversial, with some believing Paul was manipulated by the older Lundy. Number 4. Andrew Golden and Mitchell Johnson. In 1998, Arkansas middle school students Andrew Golden and Mitchell Johnson went on a shooting spree at Westside Middle School. Mitchell was 13 and Andrew was just 11 at the time. They killed 4 female students, a teacher, and injured 10 more people. The boys became 2 of the youngest Americans to be sentenced to prison on multiple charges of manslaughter and murder. Their prosecutors said they'd be facing the death penalty if it weren't for their age. Both were released on their 21st birthdays. Andrew has remained free, while Mitchell just couldn't get enough of that prison lifestyle and was sentenced to 12 more years for theft. Number 3. Daniel Bartlett. In 2011, 14-year-old Daniel Bartlett killed his sleeping mother by hitting her 7 times in the head with a claw hammer. He then lit her body on fire and called the police to report that a burglar had killed her. Detectives found inconsistencies in Daniel's claims and recovered a deleted computer file which detailed his murder plans. It was written in the form of a story. Daniel had no clear motive, but his mother's former partner claimed Daniel enjoyed violent films and video games, which is an irritatingly thin correlation considering people have been murdering each other well before film or video games were invented. Daniel was sentenced to a minimum of 16 years imprisonment. Number 2. Alisa Bustamonte. In 2009, Alisa Bustamonte murdered her 9-year-old neighbor Elizabeth Olton in their hometown of Missouri. Alisa attacked Elizabeth when she was walking home from a friend's house, slitting her throat, stabbing her, then burying her in a pre-dug woodland grave. Alisa's severe psychological problems and difficult family life were raised during the trial. She had previously attempted suicide and apparently killed Elizabeth to see how it would feel. She also listed killing people as a hobby on her YouTube page. In her diary, she wrote, "I just fucking killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throat. I don't know how to feel. It was amazing." Alisa was sentenced to life in prison in 2012 with the possibility of parole. Number 1. John Venables and Robert Thompson. This is number 1 for its sheer brutality. In 1993, 10-year-olds John Venable and Robert Thompson were skipping school when they came across 3-year-old James Bulger, who was waiting outside of a store for his mother. The boys lured James away and brought him on a 2-mile walk along a canal. They were spotted by almost 40 witnesses, but none intervened because they assumed James was a younger sibling. During the walk, the 2 sadistic shitheads punched, kicked, and dropped James on his head. Some of this was seen by adult witnesses, but no one came to James's aid. The feral 10-year-olds brought James onto the local railway where they flung paint in his eye, threw stones at him, beat him with bricks, and hit him with an iron bar. They also sexually assaulted him and laid his body on the railroad track, covering his bleeding head with bricks. James's body, which had been run over by a train, was discovered 2 days later. The torturers were identified from closed-circuit television footage and tried in adult court. They were placed in rehabilitation units but were controversially released in 2001. No clear motive was determined, so the blame was placed on everyone's favorite scapegoat, violent movies and video games.
That's it for this countdown. And have a good one!